Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete for Anxiety here, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about in. Welcome in today's episode. Before we get started today, we need to cover a few things really quick. Let's talk about the Pete for Anxiety Patreon first off. It's only $1, guys. $1. What does $1 get you? $1 gets you into the exclusive episodes I am recording currently. I'm actually focusing on certain different diagnoses of things to show you guys what it actually looks like as it manifests in a person. So why not for $1, judges? Yeah, they said $1. I just checked with them too. See, they said it was okay. It was $1 anyways. Let's also talk about the Oracle Talk Radio Networks app. In case you can't be here live listening to me, watching this video, supporting the show, you can listen to it on the radio app. Why not? It connects us live to our 365 radio. Just go to your app stores and download the Oracle Talk Radio Network. You'll see the big old Oracle Talk Radio Network app logo right on there. Download it and it'll connect you to me, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, to Pete for Anxiety when I'm live doing my thing right here, informing the world and raising mental health awareness. So where are you going to be? 10 a.m., of course. Come on, we just talked about this. Pay attention for once. Damn, do y'all know how to listen? And as always, guys, like, follow, and share the YouTube channel. If you guys like what you're seeing, leave some comments, man. We want to know. I want to know if you like what you're on. You want to be on the show? Let me know. Hit me up at PeteVersusAnxietyPod@gmail.com. And as always, guys, enjoy the show. And by the way, did I mention to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure because some of y'all are hard of hearing in the back, may have to yell louder or get a megaphone or something. But, anyways, let's get today's show started. Y'all have a great one. Enjoy. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is really talked about. My guest today is Austin J. Karrrr. He's known as the sobriety coach on TikTok. Austin, say hi to everybody.
Hey, Pete. How are you doing? Hey, everybody.
Doing great, man. I'm glad you're here today. Like I said, this is a live show, so basically anybody you want to ask Austin some questions, you can. Austin, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Pete, thanks again for having me here. My name is Austin. I am a happiness and sobriety coach. I work with people on not only getting sober and staying sober, but finding happiness while doing it. I started my sobriety journey almost 10 years ago. As a matter of fact, 10 years in 3 days. I will celebrate 10 years of continuous sobriety. And I'm really excited about that. I'm also just really excited about what's happening in the sobriety community as a whole right now. Lots of people trying things out, understanding what it means to live a life in recovery and finding that space for themselves. And so much of this is wrapped up in the mental health as well as sobriety, right? Getting rid of our drug of choice is just one part of this process, but working on all the other things is definitely a big part of it as well.
Yeah, just sobriety, and that all does go together because everybody says that, when you have a mental problem, you self-diagnose it and you're self-medicating it, and then that's where addiction leads to, and then just everything just goes off the rails completely from there. And stuff like that. So yeah, it's a big thing that I don't think people look at too. They all kind of say, "Hey Joe, how you doing?" And everything like that, And it's funny because if you look at the statistics of it, what did my one guest, head of guest, she had told me that like mostly 90% of the people basically fail. Almost everybody that goes in recovery is going to have a slip up at some point. Others make it out, and it's really scary to know that we are not doing enough for it though. Like, if the numbers are so off tilted, it's like, well, what are we doing about it? Nothing, obviously, because we're still having these problems.
Yeah, I think addiction is going to be with us forever. That's part of just, I think, who we are as a human race. I think addiction is just part of what we deal with. The interesting thing to me, those stats, when you look at actually what we see in the recovery space, between 10 and 18% of people are what we would call spontaneously sober. At some point, they have an addiction, alcohol use disorder, a substance use disorder, or a process or behavior addiction, and they overcome that with no treatment at all. So we actually see a lot of people finding recovery just through their own work, not doing anything else. And you've probably met people like this where they're like, I had a drinking problem for a while and I just quit and I'm fine. Yeah. And that works for some people. And then the other thing that's really interesting, if you can make it to a year of recovery, year of sobriety, 60% of people who make it to a year stay sober. And so the stats are actually really good. And I think sometimes we get stuck in this like negativity around like how many people fail. I'm going to use quotes there because in reality, a lot of people succeed. It's just they succeed in a different way than what we would traditionally call success.
Yeah.
They have a return to use on their journey. They have periods where maybe they're struggling a little bit more. They're not failing. They're just not quite on the path that they want to be on.
Yeah, that makes sense though. I mean, I know a lot of people struggle, and you know what? It's a lot of people relapse and things like that. And I think people need to understand that it's going to happen. Some people relapse. It's just like don't beat yourself up about it if you have to restart the counter and stuff like that. I mean, you're trying. It's hard. Like the cigarettes. People trying to quit cigarettes. I talked to one guy. He's like, I just quit. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Because most people can't even get out of that. And it's just it's like people don't even think about it because cigarettes, it's like, it's an everyday habit for them. They just like that constant motion of, and now they have what is the nicotine pouches now. I'm like, that'll be the next big addiction thing. Here we go. Then it's going to be like, I got to constantly have a Rogue. I'm like, oh God, help us all.
I kicked a pack a day habit by starting vaping, and then that was even harder to quit than the cigarette. So
You know
it
what I'm
is a
saying? Exactly.
brutal
So, you
thing.
know what I mean? It's like one leads to another. And it's like,
Yeah, absolutely.
because
One
I
of the
don't think
things
people realize, though, honestly, that it's the cigarette companies making these things. So they're like, okay, well, I got you off this one, but hey, I got you here now.
I made the mistake of watching that documentary about Juul, and it was like I was just got more and more angry the more I watched it. So I think those guys set out with a good intention, but somehow money corrupted it. So
Yeah, always.
yeah. B, I want to mention something you just talked about. I talk about this every day. So I host a live every single day, like you do here, and I love it. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, twice a day, and then Fridays once in the afternoon. I talk about the recovery every single day. It's so much of what I do. But one of the things we talk about is when people are talking about recovery, they have this binary idea of success or failure. And one of the things that we talk about every day is to stop thinking about it as starting over. So
Yeah,
if you started your recovery journey, I started mine January 23rd of 2015. I started that journey, but it doesn't necessarily mean if I did have a return to use, it doesn't mean I started over, right? So if I had a year, if you have 3 weeks or whatever it is, and then you have a return to use, you're not starting and stopping, right? You
yeah,
are continuing. And so I think it's really important that we start to change, like you do so much in the mental health space. We need to change the way we talk about these things, because sometimes this idea of starting over brings with it so much shame that isn't useful in the conversation. So people are sometimes continuing in their use because they're feeling shameful about the fact that they had a return to use. Whereas if we can say, hey, that was yesterday, you had a drink, you were off path for what you wanted to be on, let's just continue the journey today. So a
yeah,
lot of people that I work with, instead of counting days, they have like a recovery path. So started my recovery on this date, and I've had this long total in my recovery versus counting like consecutive days.
yeah, yeah. I get that though, and I think that's a fresh approach to how you look at it, though. Instead of like you said, counting days, now you're just looking at it as okay. Well, I'm on a path. This is where I'm going. This is where I'm at, and I think that's probably a way better way to look at it, honestly, because that way you not feel like you're counting numbers. Well, I got to restart the counter over again, and it's really not what it is. It's just
Yeah.
we're all human. We all do things. It's hard. It's not addiction. It's not like addiction's easy to break. I mean, if it was, we all would do it every day.
Right. Yeah. We would just stop.
Hmm.
Right. I mean, it would be that easy. You just quit and you'd move on with your life. But that's not the way it is for a lot of people.
No,
Um,
unfortunately, it's not.
yeah. Yeah. I like Joe, 4 years, clean from 3 packs a day. Oh my gosh.
Jesus, I saw that earlier too. I was like, "Geez, Joe."
That's some work, my friend. That takes some work to do that. You know what I have said for so long, quitting smoking was way harder for me than quitting drinking, because
Yeah,
the drinking consequences were so near term. I was kind of dealing with them every single day,
yeah,
but the consequences from smoking are really long term. It's future Austin problems. And I think that makes it a lot harder to quit. So anybody who quits smoking and vaping, I just hats off, because it is so. I quit in 2018, but it took me 3 years after I got sober to quit smoking.
yeah. My wife uses vapes here and there, but she can't do it for a long period of time because she always gets pneumonia all the time because it
Mm.
has all the and it's just like it's a vicious cycle for people though. I've watched my mom smoke it since I was a kid, and she was bad. Like I think she was like 2-3 packs a day, kind of close to where Joe was, and it was just like it was hard to watch her because then she was trying to quit later on, and you could see she struggled bad.
Yeah.
Like she was trying to, and like she'd go through these like really horrible mood swings and things like that, and she'd be real irritable, and and it was hard to watch her just do it because she constantly smoke all the time. But that was the thing, though, back then they didn't know, nobody cared to look at the effects of what the long term of smoking would have been. And I think as her health started declining a little bit, she just kind of like started realizing, hey, I got to stop before this becomes a problem. And it's funny because a lot of people when they're smoking too, it's like when they start, like they'll be super skinny, and then when they quit, it's like they swell up kind of thing. And like it's weird for some people because you're just like all you're doing is you're quitting smoking, and that's it. And it has that much of an effect on you. It's kind of crazy to see, but and then there's vaping and like we said, nicotine pouches now, and it's like guys, let's stop giving into this stuff, man. Like it just keeps going.
Yeah, it's really interesting. A methodology that I use with a lot of my clients for craving management, mindfulness craving management. Dr. Judd Brewer established this research, but their process of breaking the reward center in our brains when we start to break that system down is that, so they've developed a mindfulness practice where you have a craving, you use this mindfulness practice, and whether or not you continue using or not, you've taken this beat in the craving kind of feedback loop. In the smoking cessation work that they did, people actually lost weight. So not only were they continuing to smoke, but cutting back. And by 21 days, they had smoking cessation, a majority of them. But the interesting thing was that they were losing weight because they were using this mindfulness practice. They were checking in with themselves. They were being aware of their actions. They were paying attention to their thoughts. And in that process, not only did they quit smoking, but they lost weight in the process, which is a really interesting research about how our brains work in that reward center.
Yeah.
And if we can start to break that down, just how much easier it is.
Yeah, that's crazy though. I mean, because that's interesting because, like I said, though, I met one person. She started quitting, and then she just swelled up like a balloon. I was just like, I don't get it. Like and I was still young at the time when it all happened. It's like, and then I just like it was the craziest thing ever because it was like, okay, that's weird. You just stop doing one act, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, here I go, and then I have all these other problems, and it's horrible. It really is.
Joe mentioned in the chat when he's driving, it's the absolute worst. I chomp Tic Tacs like it is going out of style when I'm in the car. Still to this day, I go through, my kids are always like, how many boxes of Tic Tacs do you go through? And I'm like, too many. But
yeah, I remember those little chiclet gum things, Oh my God, my grandmother used to give us packs of those all the time.
But man, I can go through a little box of Tic Tacs like nobody's business.
Yeah, and is it just it's the sensation of something being there, isn't it? Because I smoked early on in an early age, and then I stopped all of a sudden. And it was just like, all right, okay, it's so cool. Now it's not cool anymore. Time to do something else, And
right.
And
it
always
was never cool. We just convinced ourselves it was.
Listen, it was cool. Stop it, okay? It was cool. We all thought it was cool. You want to be fitting in with the crowd. You want to be like the rest of the boys, and
right?
No.
Oh my God, that's something I never want to have to quit again. Not gonna lie. Actually, most things I don't want to have to quit.
Well, yeah, because now if you look at it, how disgusting the habits are and things like that, it's like, ugh. And what is it? I was watching Seinfeld the other day, and it came out that episode of Kramer as the smoking lounge in his apartment or whatever. And he comes out, and he looks so much older. I was like, no, because it's like weird now. Because they used to be able to smoke indoors most places. Now you can't even do that anymore. Where I'm at, I know they put an ordinance out where you can't be in a certain range of the building. You have to be farther away. And I was like, well, about time we start doing something now. I mean, just like. I wish they do the same thing with mental health, though, too, because it's like it's so hard to find care, though, if you think about it. Like, if people don't have enough access to it or enough knowledge to things. And then it's like so many people are so put off by it because they see all these things like, oh, well, pills. And it's like, guys, it's not pills. Stop, please. Yeah. And it drives me crazy when people say that, or they say, oh, I don't want to talk about my feelings. And don't talk about your feelings. Just go talk to somebody because they can already analyze what you're saying and understand what you're thinking, and things like that. Because I did an interview with a gentleman named Tim. Dr. Tim basically was telling me things about myself without even knowing any of these things, just by what I was telling him. And he was like, I was blown away because I'm like, damn, I didn't even realize that. Because he's like, yeah, have you ever noticed these things? And I'm like, no, Dr. Tim, I didn't. Thanks, And it was so weird because it's like I didn't tell him anything, and he's just basically reading exactly what I'm saying. But he's also been doing it for 30 plus years, so he's had enough experience. He knows what to look for in these situations.
It is amazing when you talk to a professional and they're just like, oh yeah, okay, I know. Joe, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Joe, Austin's also on TikTok, by the way, too. He does lives on there all the time. And he said he started doing YouTube as well.
Yeah, I hosted TikTok. So doing 45 minutes every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning, and then afternoons at 2 o'clock Eastern. So
Yeah.
lots of lives. We have a great group of people that hang out every day, celebrate recovery, talk about the options. We talk a lot about boundaries and mental health, emotional health, all of those
Yeah.
things. So
Well, it's awesome though. You talk about
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. That's great to hear more people are talking about it because I feel like the conversation isn't there enough. I feel like, I think it's more because a lot of people don't understand a lot of these different issues and things that people deal with. And I feel like, that's the whole point of this show, anyways, is just to get people like yourself on here to talk about these kind of things and keep expanding the conversation further, for people to see that like all these people have all these different things that go on in their lives, but people deal with things, and we're all human at the end of the day. Like my one guest, Lucy Miller, said, she's like, I'm just a person. I said, no, Lucy, you have 635,000 downloads on your song. I think you're beyond a regular person at this point. But she made it feel so normal when you're talking to her because she was like, I'm just a regular person, man. I'm like, really? Because I don't think so.
it is. I want to go back to something you just said because the stigma around mental health and addiction, so much overlap there, and so much of it is just about continuing to talk about it,
Yeah.
and for people to see other people working on these things and understanding them and struggling and succeeding, and I think it's so critical that we bring these things into the light that, and we
Hmm.
have in the recovery community, we call it recovering out loud, right? Like I really believe in telling my journey, telling as much as I can about my reality, not sugarcoating, but also not glorifying it. Like I'm not here to
Yeah.
glorify my addiction or my recovery. But the more we talk about it, when I got sober 10 years ago, I didn't know but a couple people that were sober and they didn't talk about it at all. Right. It was very much a secret, very much frowned upon, like, oh, you had a problem, so you had to get sober. And now I think we're seeing this change in the mental health space to a certain extent and in recovery to a certain extent where like more and more people are talking about it and it's becoming more normalized to at least talk about. It doesn't necessarily mean we're fixing the problem because we're certainly not. We have so much policy change that needs to happen,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
much more support that needs to happen. But
Exactly.
at least people are out talking about it.
Yeah, and that's the nonprofit. If you look across the bottom of the screen whenever I'm live, uh, podcast preventions is what I'm a part of, and that's basically what we're doing is we're pushing for mental health to be normalized for people, have more programs and pay, different opportunities to get speakers out there, people like myself and other people to talk about these things and all that kind of stuff, and it's get the conversation going. And my guest last week, Brian, he's actually working on an app that's supposed to help kids basically learn how to basically deal with their emotions. And all it is 15 minutes a day. It's all he's pushing for. It's like 15 minutes a day, teaches them not to keep compressing all their feelings so they pop like a top and, things like that. And then I also did a Patreon recording. I did an extra recording with somebody from Canada named Leroy. And Leroy has this thing where he says he tells these kids, he's teaching them just to breathe. And he's like, it seems so simple. And my wife tells our little one that too, goes, just breathe. And the idea is that you're breathing before you're thinking about it. And he's got kids as young as 6 years old, and because he works as a principal, so he has the kids in the school. He has them all doing the same thing. Hey, what should you have done? And a 6 year old kid has more idea, understanding of what they did wrong versus most adults nowadays. Like half of us will sit there and deny things and say, and oh, I didn't do nothing. And these little kids are sitting there like they're like, well, I should have just breathed. And I was laughing so hard every time he kept saying it. I was like, that's just great because it's like you're teaching them so young, so later on as they go, it's like, and then it'll start being contagious too, because where he's at in Canada, his whole school is like that too. He's like, I got a safe space. We just talk to him. And I think that's the problem with a lot of that stuff is that when people want to talk about things, they just want to go to the polar extremes of things like, oh, this, and that's why I hate talking politics with people because a lot of people just go, "Phew, phew, phew." It's just like, they just want to start throwing things out. It's like, whoa, can we just have a conversation here? Chill out. And it's the same thing with mental health, though, if you think about it, because when you start talking about like suicide and things like that, people just start going jump, like pucker tight, like going, oh shit, okay, we just got real because they
Mhm.
don't know how to react to what people are saying or what to do in those situations.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that breathing. Kristen Neff was on a podcast, right? Self compassion guru, researcher, leader in that space. And she had this breathing practice that she recommended, which is breathe in, my friend. And you say, my friend, and breathe out, my friend. And that's it. Something so simple.
Yeah, and you
How
know what I
easy it
mean?
is to
Because
have it.
it's kind of like what Leroy's doing with the kids. He's like, just breathe, and that's his
Yeah.
book's called "And Breathe." That's all it
Yeah.
is. He's like, it's because they're all doing the same thing basically. They're just thinking about their actions before they do the next step. And it's
Yeah.
like, you're 6 years old and you've already learned more than most people did, kid. I'm like, that's great, because you teach them now, they go longer, and then they'll start teaching other people, and it's even better because it's a contagious thing, because then everybody starts doing it, and then we all start having a normal conversation instead of me screaming at you about something and then it going nowhere.
Right. So many of my clients, we talk about the feelings wheel. It's something we work on really early. Obviously, in addiction, often we're not dealing with our emotions. So many of my clients print out a feelings wheel, have it on their fridge, right?
Yeah,
So not only are they working on it, but their spouse is seeing it, their kids are seeing it. And it's just like that contagion of, hey, let's actually identify what this feeling that we're having is. And then we can discuss it, and I can deal with it, and I can name it, and I can sit with it, and then I can let it go. But that whole process of like, how can we um, use this as a positive infection to
yeah.
many of the people in our lives. Totally agree.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that makes sense too. And then my question, I do have a question for you though. I'm
Sure,
wondering,
man.
okay, so for people that are in recovery, for
Mhm.
the loved ones and everybody around them, what tips do you have for people hey, like I was told by somebody that was a former addict, she said, encourage them like very lightly, because my wife, she's working on her own thing now. And I just encourage her the small steps she takes. And I'm like, hey, that's great. And she's like, that's awesome. That's what you're doing, because it makes them feel like they're winning a battle, even though it doesn't seem like they're doing a lot. It still means a lot to them.
Yeah. I recorded a video about this a while ago. I actually asked my wife because I didn't remember the early days of my recovery. That might be shocking, but I had like the last 90 days of what I dealt with in the first 90 days of recovery are pretty blurry.
Yeah, I bet.
And so I asked my wife about it, and she said one of the things that she felt was really important was that she give me space to recover.
Yeah,
And that for her meant picking up some of the household load. Now, I hadn't been doing anything around the house, so it was not hard for her to like pick up the household load. But if you are in a relationship where you're sharing some of those responsibilities in the
yeah,
household, recovery is really exhausting, especially the early days of sobriety. You're dealing with a lot of things you haven't been dealing with, not only physically and emotionally, but like you are dealing with a lot of shame usually and guilt
yeah,
and things like that. And chances are people are investing their time into a recovery program, peer support, a coach, a therapist. So there's additional stressors on time. And so she was really great about just like, what do you need to do? Where do you need to spend your time? When do you need to be gone? That was super helpful. We took all of the alcohol out of our house, which was really helpful for me as just kind of like a barrier to action,
yeah,
which was really helpful. My wife still drinks occasionally, like maybe a glass of wine a month,
yeah,
but for the first 90 days, she didn't drink around me at all, which was super helpful. Um, the biggest thing I think that we really worked on early in my recovery, and actually in our recovery together, because we had to repair our relationship as well, was a really open line of communication. So if I was struggling with something, I was honest with her, and she gave me the space to struggle,
yeah,
right? Which can be really scary for someone who's on the outside looking in. Like if I'm saying I'm stressed, if I say I'm craving, if I'm having these thoughts, that's really a lot of stress on them. But I was really honest about that. And throughout my entire recovery, have been really honest with her when I'm struggling with something. So that was super helpful. Um, the other thing I think is really important for family members who are having someone in their life recover is that they try and step out back into the circle of control for themselves. So often we see people, family members, wanting to try and control what the person recovering is doing.
yeah,
So you need to go to a meeting, and that meeting needs to be XYZ. For a lot of people, the only thing they know is AA. And so, like, I know you're in recovery, but you need to be going to AA meetings. And they're like, well, that doesn't really work for me, or I'm trying this other thing, or I'm doing this, or I'm working with a coach or a therapist. But the family member is still really trying to control the situation. And that makes for a lot of frustration in the relationship and can cause a lot of animosity and kind of pushback on both people's parts. So being open-minded about what recovery can look like and the steps that need to be taken.
It's funny because it's just like mental health. They think therapy is the only thing. Like you were saying, AA is all people know, and there's so many other things, and that's the funny part of it all. Is it's like they're very similar. That's why I'm trying to get to people. Very similar things. Like AA is all you know, therapy is all I know. But and it's funny because a lot of people have their own expectations of, oh, we'll go do these meetings. I'm like, they don't work for everybody, dude. Unfortunately, like people don't like to hear that part. Oh, well,
No.
that's not for me. Okay, well, that's great. There's 10,000 other things you can do out there nowadays. Like
Yeah.
AA is not great for most people, but for some people, it's not. Some people just don't feel like it works for them. And I think that's the one thing too is that people need to understand is that if you're in this thing, you're either in, you're out. You don't be half footing it in there. Because I have a friend who's dealing with something similar. He's got an addiction of another sort, and she was like telling me about it. She said so. She was talking to me about it, and I said, "Here's my best advice to you: is that either you're in this thing or you're outside this thing. You need to decide right now because you're not going to go half foot in and then decide halfway through, okay, well, I don't like how this is going and just leave them because you can't do that to them. It's going to be a
Right.
rough road for them and everything else like that. And I'm sure you could agree to that on that one.
Yeah.
Like you need to be there or you don't need to be there. Decide which one you want to be because don't be the person that's in the middle and goes, well, this is too much for me. And then go, all right, I'm out. It
Right.
doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I think relationships are hard generally, right?
Hmm.
And it's so important to have those boundaries. And again, going back to that, like, what's the open line of communication? So we don't get to that point where we're like, I'm out, right? I can't do it. I gotta bounce. And that so we can prevent that.
Yeah,
I want to go back to something you just said about therapy and AA. I do think it's so funny. Like, I know you're in this, and I'm in obviously my like recovery bubble. I can think of 20 things off the top of my head that people can do, right?
exactly.
And if you ask someone, and this is what I recommend to everybody, find your entry point. So people are like, how do I get started? Or how do I find a rehab or a detox or whatever? I'm like, call one place. All you have to
Yeah,
do is call one place. These people who are helping are helpers. So if
yeah,
they're like, I don't have a bed for you, but here are 10 other places you can call, right? If you go to a smart recovery meeting, for example, and you're like, I am looking for XYZ, somebody in that room is going to be able to help you. If you talk to a coach like me and I'm not the right coach for you, I know coaches, I know therapists, I know people who can support you, and I'm more than happy to tell you that. So that you got to find an entry point if you're looking for one, and then leverage that point that you found, because that is how you're going to get all the information you need.
yeah, exactly. It's basically networking in the same time essentials. Austin may not be the one for you, and it's the same with therapy. This therapist didn't work for me, but there's 10,000 other therapists out there. Like, and a lot of people tell you that I've heard people say they go through like 5 or 6 of them at least before they get to one they really like. And I'm like, me, luckily, I've only gone through 2 or 3, and I'm just like, okay, I found one that I click with, and I'm like, it's not an easy road. Like I tell people in the beginning, I'm like, it's not an easy road. Like this is something you're deciding to do. That's awesome. But just be prepared that you may fall down before you get back up and find something that works.
Yeah.
And don't get frustrated because everybody has a different style. Like you have a different style. This person has this style, different ways to approach to different people because everybody has a way they like to be taught things. It's there you go, right here, just like Matt's saying right here. This is a good friend of the show, basically.
Okay.
He, like I said, right there, gone through 4 therapists and I found mine. See what I'm saying? Like, there's been multiple numbers. It's not like it's uncommon, and I think that's a lot of people need to understand is that you're going to go through a few of them and things like that. That it's going to make it seem like it's hard, but at the same time, you're just trying to find the person you click with. It's just like dating, the same thing. Like y'all go on that first date, y'all talk to each other, and then you decide at the end if they'll ask you, "Hey, do you think we can have a further conversation?" If it's no, then you're SOL. Then go to the next one. It's not that hard.
Yeah. I always invite people to explore what it is that they're not liking about it, so
Hmm.
they can start to like, I want to gain information from this. So if I go to a therapist and I'm not vibing with them and I walk away, what I don't want to do is just repeat the same process. I mean, how many times you talk to me like, I've gone through 6 of
Yeah.
whatever. Like,
Right.
what'd you
Yeah.
learn? I just didn't like them. I just didn't like them. Like everyone, like, okay, what didn't you like? What are you looking for? Maybe what wasn't there? And that
Yeah.
way, when you go to the next thing, you're bringing that old information with you and applying it to this new situation. So you're always learning along the way. So people are like, I don't like AA. Like, okay, what didn't you like about it?
Yeah.
It's this and
Exactly.
this and this and this. Okay, what did you like about it? This and this and this. Okay, now based on that information, you can apply that to the next thing you're going to try.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you look at it and you keep doing, you'll eventually find something clicks for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, though, but we live in the world of everybody wants it now. So it isn't now, Austin. They want it now. They don't want to wait. Okay. Why wait?
if I could snap my fingers and have everything be better, I would do it. Right.
God.
I'm not making people do the long road because it's what I want for them. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and it's funny. What is it now? Video game addiction's a new thing too. I That one made me laugh for a bit. It's like, oh god. It's like
Oh,
like I get people get addicted to things and people have addictive personalities and things like that, but it's the same thing you could say about people that go to the gym too much or like gym rats.
yeah.
What are you gonna say? They're addicted to that too. It's like, what are they addicted to feeling good or they want to get better? I mean, some of them can overdo it. And it's
Yeah.
just like anything, just do it in small doses, like TV and all these other things, the internet, your phones. Like I think people are more addicted to their phones than video games at this
Oh,
point because like with TikTok and everything else, it's just so many
yeah. We
social
just,
media apps and so much going on at once. We can't miss anything. So I got to come back and see this. And it's like,
yeah.
I literally have to turn my phone on silent most days because I have so many different invites to come to these people's lives and things like that. It's like, I know you're live. You don't have to send me 40,000 invites. I know you're there. Thank you. It's like, stop sending them to me. And I literally go in there and tell some sometimes, like, yo, hey, let's chill it with the invites. I know you're live. I got it. Calm down.
I actually just got a new device to try and help with my phone addiction because
Yeah.
it is a real thing. Like social, and
Hmm.
obviously I'm on social media a lot. My clients are online. I work with people all over the
Yeah.
world. And so it's really like there's a lot going on. But I got this device called a brick, and it's a physical little device, a little gray box, and you can brick your phone. The cool thing about it is that you can choose which apps to have on and which ones to have off. So I have like my mental health stuff on and my client communication on,
Yeah.
but everything else is bricked. The really awesome thing is if I want to unlock my phone, I have to go physically to the device, which is on the other side of my house.
Oh,
So I have
okay.
to walk up there, I have to unbrick my phone, then I can use it. And then, so it's making me take this action, which is super helpful. I would highly recommend it to anybody who's struggling with like putting the phone down. It just makes things a little bit better for me. So
Yeah, I do that too. I'll do cleanses where I just kind of leave for a bit and I don't get on for a while.
yeah,
And I'm just because I'm busy already as it is with the podcast. I'm doing this every week and I'm preparing every week for this stuff and I'm booking people all the time. I'm always doing something, and people always ask me like, "When do you sleep?" I'm like, "Well, when I'm not here, obviously. Where do you think I'm at when I'm not responding to you? I'm sleeping. But hey, thanks for the 40,000 invites. I appreciate it. It's just like God. And at first, when I started doing this, I my phone would just blow up because at first I was trying to do everything myself, but then I found out, oh, they make digital calendars for this. And I'm like, oh, really? That's awesome. Nice to know.
I think everybody starts with like brute force, and then
Hmm.
you're like, okay, well, this is unsustainable. So
Yeah.
what's one area? I did the same thing, like started with like my scheduling and all of that. And then I realized like, oh, my clients can schedule themselves. And so that's a
Yeah. You know what
super
I'm
easy
saying?
thing
Like,
for,
it's so much easier now.
oh my God.
I
Yeah.
just set them the calendar, like, here you go. You just figure it out.
Yep.
My favorite thing though is they're like, well, there's no date, Pete. There's no dates available currently. I'm like, did you scroll over to September?
Ready. Got to get a couple months out. Yeah.
I'm like, I think I'm more than a couple months out at this point now. I think right now the only dates open are September 22nd and the week after at 10 o'clock in the morning.
That's
And
awesome.
it's crazy to say though, because like I started this thing as an idea in August, and here I am now. I'm booked all the way out to 2025, and I was already out to July since November of last year. And then I decided to join this other site called Podmatch. So now I have these ones where it matches me up to more people. And
Hmm.
it's nice because everything flows just the same. But like, hey, they can schedule themselves. If they need me to do something, I can set the date too. It's not a big deal. And it's less stress on me trying to do every single thing on top of everything. So my anxiety doesn't start going through the roof as I'm trying to like schedule. Feel, oh God, da, 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 da. And it's like everybody's like, I want a part of this thing. And it's like, okay, well, there's a calendar over there. Well, you could do it for me. No, no, there's a calendar. Go do it yourself. You're a big boy and girl.
Yeah.
Go ahead and handle it. Go ahead. There's a Patreon one too, in case you don't like those the Monday time slots and things. And like people are like, "Hey, can I do it later than 10 o'clock on Mondays?" No, because I got things going on.
That's what time it is. Yeah.
It's like I'm a part of a network, man. I'm like, I don't. This is my spot. And then these additional recordings I'm doing now is because there's nothing in the space, and they've told me they're like, "Hey, if there's open room, go for it.
Oh, yeah.
You can go live as much as you want." I'm like, "All right, hey, sounds good to me. Let's see how much more we can go with this thing."
That's awesome. Pete, I was thinking of you today. I was on my live this afternoon. I was talking about my anniversary coming up, and then I was just like, I had what I referred to as simmering nervousness.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people in my live were like, that's anxiety. Like what you're
God.
describing is anxiety. I was like, I like simmering nervousness better than the term anxiety for
I,
myself.
I wish people would stop trying to be doctors. Like WebMD is nice, but stop using it, please, for the love of God. Like, stop diagnosing yourself with cancer. It doesn't work like that.
Right. I always
It's
tell people every day I'm like, I'm not a doctor. So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
you know what I mean? And that's the thing too with this one. I'm like, I'm just an average person. I get to meet new people every week and we just have a conversation. Like this morning I learned about, the fact that we were somebody in another life. And the woman, as the example was, is that the gentleman had a fear of needles, couldn't figure out why. But when she dug deep, because she's a hypnotherapist, she was digging deep, found out that he in a past life was lethal injection. He died by lethal injection in another life, basically. So that's why he had a fear of needles, which is weird because if you think about it, it's like everybody talks about, being old souls and things like that. And she's like, that's really true though. I'm like, I didn't ever thought of that, honestly. And after hearing that story, I was just like, that's interesting. And she practices, she's a medium as well. So she was telling me about a case in Canada where she's in the UK, mind you. She has not been to Canada. She said, I could see where this person's body was at. Like I could see around it from the aspect of where the body was. And she's like, I'm like, that's insane. Like, how do you explain that to people? And she's like, yeah, when I talk to people, I do readings. She said the one thing I do is I don't tell them anything that you could just find on the internet. I go for something that they only they would know and things like that. And these are people I meet every week. I'm like, I got people I meet every single week and tell me different things. I had a guy last week tell me he was getting ready to off himself right before the show, possibly. He was in it, and it's like, what do you say at that point? Like, I got to sit there when this is going live, and I've got to keep my cool. And in my head, I'm freaking out, like, oh God, please don't tell me you're going to say that you attempted to put the gun to your head or something. Please don't, you know what I mean? And it's just like it's crazy because it's like these conversations get, and I'm telling you, that's what people think when those things start talking. They start talking about that stuff. A lot of people are like, oh, you're just joking. Oh, you're not serious. So I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know how much more serious you need to be. The gun's in hand. He's sitting
Right.
there. I mean, and it's the same thing with, everything else. You think everybody's like telling you these stories. It's like always listen to what people are saying to you because you never know what's going on with people. Like,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because it's like, then that's where the self-medication comes in. People are like, oh, I'm dealing with anxiety, what they call anxiety,
Mhm.
or they're depressed or they're dealing with hearing these voices and they just want the voices to stop talking. That's when, alcohol comes in sometimes. Like, well, you said to drown it out and things like that. You hear people say, and it's just like it makes me laugh internally because it's like, no guys, it's not what it is. It's like, and it's like, they need help, but then they're so afraid to get help because everybody in social media tells you that, oh no, you're crazy if you go get help.
Right.
Why? Because I'm trying to better myself. I don't understand what the problem is.
Yeah. Yeah. The stigma still is so there. It's just so like I'm sure that you experience this, and I'll speak for myself, but I live in a bubble of sobriety.
Yeah.
Like my friends, most of my friends are sober, or at least the people I acquaint myself with, right? All of the people I work with are on a sober journey. The people in my community, nearly 100 people online that are there every week, 5 times a week, right? And then I get out of that bubble and I'm like, oh, people are still really struggling with the idea of what sobriety is, or that they're going to miss out on everything. And I'm sure that you have the same thing with mental health. Like,
Yeah.
I'm in a bubble of mental health. Like people talk about their feelings and they know what a feelings wheel is and they work through these things and they're exploring their emotions. And then you go into the real world and you're like, holy shit, none of that is happening.
It's funny. I get people who give me weird looks when I tell them I run a podcast. They're like, "You run a podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I tell them what it's about, and some of them are just looking at me puzzled, and other people are like, "Oh, well, let me go check it out," And it's like I'm like, all I do is I invite people to come on and talk about things. It's literally like a talk show, basically. I'm having them come on, tell their stories, talk about what they do, their different experiences, and things like that. And it's funny because you get the mixed reactions from the different generations. Some people are like, oh, we're all, oh no, there's nothing wrong. There's just cheer up. You're not depressed. I'm like, oh God, please stop.
Stop
It's
being
like it
sad.
makes you worry. And I'm sure you experience that with TikTok. Like we were just talking about it off air. We were talking about how some of those comments you probably get, you're just like, yeah, okay, well, all right. There we go.
Gives me an opportunity to work on pausing and letting my brain catch up before my mouth runs too fast.
He's like,
Sometimes that works. Sometimes I just
God.
spout off.
And it applies to a lot of things. So it's funny because these girls I had talked to, they're very pretty, by standards of society, very pretty. The things these guys say is just like, oh God, can you please stop talking? Like half of you just stop talking. Literally, it's the same concept. Like you put yourself on the internet, obviously, expect people to say something to you. But it's like, can we just stop with this nonsense? Like these trolls are like they're trying a little too hard lately about things, and it's like, oh, what? I was sober for 10 minutes or something, and it's like, okay, guys, you're not funny when you're making these comments. I know you think you're hilarious. Austin's smiling at you, but really he's thinking, okay, please just stop talking.
Man, those are I get 2 comments a lot, like, I've been sober for 15 minutes. Oh, I'm not anymore. That's the one I get a lot.
Yeah.
Like, get that one. And then I get a lot of comments about me being bald. It seems to be a very popular comment, and I just will get this bald. That's all the comment says.
Oh my
And now
God.
the people that are in the community love to, like, if there's a lull in conversation, sometimes they'll just pop up bald into the chat just to remind me of where we came from. So
It's Austin just starts laughing out of nowhere. It's like, oh, that's so funny.
I actually made up a research study linking alcohol addiction and baldness. And so when I
Yeah.
really get fired up, I will spout off this entire completely fictional research study that I read about how alcohol causes baldness and that's why I'm bald. And then unfortunately, some people leave while I'm telling that story and then they think it's real. But I always follow up with the fact that it's
No.
like I've completely made the entire thing up.
There's a guy on there. I can't think of what his name is though, but he has BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. And he's interesting because like he'll just keep going. Like he's looking at your comments and he just keeps going. I don't think this guy takes a breath 90% of the time. And I'm like, man, like you're watching him and his energy level is just 100%. I'm like, dude, it's like over caffeinated a little bit, but it's really just how he is. And that one fascinates me too, because if you look at it in a book, what it says, it's like, holy crap, dude, these people are dealing with so much and so fast, and it's cycling so quick. It's like, holy crap, dude, how do some of these guys make it through the day? I'm shocked, honestly. And I've
Yeah.
met 2 people so far. I've had it. One girl actually came up to me and told me about it, and I asked her, so what's it like? And she's like, I cycle my emotions a lot. And I'm like, I kind of get that though, and it's you could see it though, but she also dealt with her mom, who's an alcoholic, who was very verbally abusive to her and things like that. So she's battling that on top of everything else. She's got that going on, and it's just crazy because it's just like, wow, how are you? I'm like, how do you make it through the day? Like most people complain about their days, but Jesus, go talk to one of them. It's just like,
Right.
holy crap, you
Yeah.
guys deal with a lot.
Yeah. I'm always amazed at the people who are complaining about their lives and like, you haven't talked to that many people, have you? Like, if you're complaining
Right.
about your day, you haven't met enough people. Yeah.
Right.
You need to go out and meet some people. And I do
Listen,
think,
I got a few of them they could be. Trust me.
I think that's one of the great things about what we're seeing with these kinds of spaces
Yeah.
and like the best of what social media can be, the best of what these live streams can be is like more visibility into these things so we can better understand it so that we know how to have conversations with people. We can hear from people who are experiencing these things instead of reading in a book or reading a research paper or seeing some Hollywood version of the story, right? We're actually hearing real people talk about their daily experience and what it's like to go through these things.
Or people like yourself that can teach people things, and you can do it on a broader scale because you have more than one person looking at this as you're telling multiple people, hey, look, these are some techniques and things you can try with people that you may know they're struggling,
Yeah.
and here's some tips and things like that, and it's so much easier to reach more people. At the same time, you get those same naysayers that come in and decide they just want to play, oh, let's see what we can type in the keyboard today. Like, hey, awesome, I'm glad you figured out how to make a message today, congratulations. Or you meet really cool people, like I met Matt here in the comment section, and all these other people, man. Like, you find so many people on there that are so like-minded with you too, and then they read my profile, and a lot of them are always asking me, hey, how's it going and everything else. And I ask people, hey, how's your mental health?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you ask somebody that question, you instantly, your brain is thinking, wait a minute, hold on. And it thinks a deeper thought. And I've asked somebody that too. I said, so what is your first thought when I ask you, how's your mental health? He's like, man, I started to have to think about it for a minute because I can't just respond back with a one-word answer. I got to really think about what you're saying next. And it's funny because I ask Matt the same thing every single day. I'll text him and say, hey, man, how you doing? And he'll give me a number scale of how he's feeling for the day and things like that too, and if I ask a bunch of people that same thing, a lot of people start doing it too. They're like, hey, Pete, I asked somebody that, and this is what they responded. And 90% of the time, you find that a lot of people just start unloading, man. They just start going, okay, and here it goes, the floodgates and things like that, and it's great because it's funny to hear because I'm the one that started saying it to people, and everybody's like, yeah, this is how it is, this, that, and they're like, oh, yeah, Pete, I tried it. It's great. Every time somebody says, Pete, I tried that, and this is what they said. And it's great to hear the response that you're getting from people. I even have a friend, Stephanie Aycock, speaking of cinema, she's working on a film called Bloom, which is basically another way to look at mental health, and it has a funny aspect to it, but it's a lot of it's about most of it's about her life, but it's fictionalizing a character instead. So this character you're basically following through is going through all these scenarios, and it's got like some humorous parts of it and things like that. I think the way it's going to be, it's going to apply to more people. And it's a different way to look at things. It's not so much forceful information. It's more, okay, this is what it is. Here's an idea. Here's a better picture of what it would be like, And it's a great thing with movies is because, everybody watches movies. We've all seen, what is it, like Patch Adams, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, things like that. Or what is it? A Beautiful Mind. That's what I'm thinking of too.
Oh, yeah.
Things like that. You're watching these, and it's so great because cinema, you can make all these magical things happen. And it's like, I think it's a great way to look at it. And it's going to change the way we look at things in general, too, and it's people like that are just trying to make differences out there. And all because of this show is the reason I met them and things like that. And the internet and everything else. I meet all these people every day, and they're all telling me, hey, Pete, I appreciate what you're doing. But at the end of the day, it feels like to me, I'm like, all I'm doing is just giving people a space to talk about these things, like I'm inviting them to come, and everybody says, hey, Pete, I like your casual conversation. I'm like, well, why not? Why can't we just talk about it? Like interviews are great, but when you have a conversation with somebody, it's a whole different story. You're like on a whole nother level. It's not like constant questions,
Yeah.
It's just like you're just talking to somebody and they're just having a great time. And then you can see a lot of people start out real calm, real closed off. And then later on, they just start revealing things like, Lucy Lenore revealed that she had BPD. I had no idea. You would have seen this woman on social media. You see all her pictures, everything else. Would never even know until she told you about it. And she almost told us what had caused it too. And I was like, ooh, we almost got there, which is great because I've never met her before that point. I've never talked to this person. I randomly messaged her, I commented on one of her posts on Instagram. She's seen it and said, heck yeah, I'm down. Let me come on the show and do this with you. And it's so cool because you get these different people from different aspects of life. And I'll have another one here at 6:00. Lives Lost is another band. They're big into mental health too. And it's great to get these people from different walks of life, like yourself. And then I get musicians. And it's great to hear everybody's conversational piece and add their input to what they think everything is, and it starts that conversation because then they start hearing other people talk about it. And then they go, hey, well, now I want to come talk about it. And it's happened a couple of times on the show, actually. There's been like, there's 2 or 3 people that have come on here that had heard somebody's story and decided, hey, now I want to be on the show.
That's so cool. I want to go back to something you said about how's your mental health. I love that idea of kind of changing the conversation and then holding space for somebody. Because how often do we like somebody asks you how you are and you're like, oh my gosh, I am like a tangle of everything inside. And then you're just like, I'm fine. I'm totally,
yeah, exactly. I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm good. Robin Williams said he was fine too, but he's no longer here with us.
Right.
Chris Farley would have, put on the appearance. He was okay, but no one knew what he struggled with on a daily basis. But when you ask that question, it really gets your brain going though. Think about it. Cause you're stop and you're thinking, okay, well, he didn't just ask me, hey, how I'm doing. So I can't respond right away. I have to actually think about the question. So the wheels start churning and then they start spreading and they'll start telling you things. And it's great.
Yeah. I love that. I love that idea. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm going to use that one too.
Listen, I ask everybody that usually there's days where I'm live. I'm just asking every single person comes in, hey, how's your mental health today? And things like that. Or, you came into the conversation earlier we were having with just random conversations. So it's not like they're going wrong. I like talking about mental health. But sometimes I like to take a break and talk about other things, like my world champions, Anyways, Austin revealed earlier that he's a Broncos fan. So we're not going to hold that against him right now. But you know what I'm saying?
It's been a tough road, my friend. It's been a tough road the last couple of years.
But you know what I'm saying? It's great because you like everybody's like, oh, there's a mental health guy. Okay, that's great. I'm the mental health guy, but I am a person at the same time. I have other interests,
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll come in there and we're not talking about it. We're just bantering back and forth. And it's nice because a lot of these guys, they have a rough time or having a rough day and they just want to come just shoot the shit or whatever. And I'm down for that too, guys. And so many people invite me to come talk to them. They're like, so come talk to me. Come talk to me. Okay. All right, guys, I can't be everywhere at once. Like, I got to have time to myself, because Monday's usually my day when I hang out with my wife and do things. But this week I have like 3 episodes because, I started doing a special guest. I'm like, well, because I've been trying to get them to come on for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
and things like that. And I have another young lady next month. She actually runs a podcast called Mentally a Badass, and she's I just love what she does. Like her whole interview style and things like that. It's just great. So she'll be interesting to me to And I get people like yourself. I get like the woman this morning. It was from the UK. Like I meet people from all over the world. I'm heard all the way to Australia that I know of. I'm probably heard even further, but they probably think I'm crazy. But it's okay. But it's great, man, because I'm reaching all these people, and all these people are coming. They want to be on the show and they want to talk about it, and it's like I like that. I like the fact that we all want to come to get together and have this conversation that no one else wants to have. And at the same time, you're not judged. Like we could say whatever we want in this space, and then if somebody is like in the comments and starts getting judged, you're out. That's it. That's the rules. Like I don't tolerate anything. Like the minute you start trying to be negative or anything like that, it's like you got to go, because this is exactly what this is. This space is meant for us to have a conversation. If you want to be argumentative, that's cool. You can be argumentative, but at the end of the day, this is a safe space I'm creating that mental health can be discussed. Addiction falls in that, and everything else. All this stuff falls into this. So it's like everybody, I think, it doesn't realize that, and it's like when they start talking, it gets contagious, and then it's great because you see that all these people start talking about it, and then people are like, "Hey, Pete, I just said, hey, how's your mental health to somebody?" And it's awesome because it's like I started that whole thing. Like I didn't hear anybody asking these questions of that sort. So when I started asking people that question, it's like other people are like, "Yeah, I asked." And there's random people I've never even met. These people, if you would never even see it coming, goes, "Hey, yeah, Pete, I tried that before. I asked somebody, and this is the result I had."
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. And I was laughing because one of the guys in this men's mental health group I'm a part of, that they get together Mondays to talk, and I've been absentee from it, honestly. I'm just busy. Like, I try to come by when I can, but they one of the guys, he came up to me and said it, like, you would never even see it coming. He was like, "Yeah, man, I asked somebody that." And he's like, "I thought that's really great," and everything like that. He's like, and I started asking people that, and I noticed that the response is different. I'm like, I told you, man, it's different when you ask that question. You get people thinking about exactly what's going on. And some people look at you crazy. Like one kid, I think I had one negative reaction. The kid was like, "Why are you asking me this question?" Because why not? What's the problem? No one's ever asked you that question before?
Probably nobody's asked anything like that before.
That's
right?
true too. Yeah.
It also implies that you care, right? If
Yeah.
you are asking that question, like the implication is that you care to listen to the answer.
Exactly.
You don't ask that question if you're not interested in what somebody's going to say.
Austin, I can tell you right now, some of the craziest things I've heard aren't even on this show. Honestly, one guy told me that his friend, unfortunately, he lost that 3 episode. Last week, I had put a video up for somebody that he had lost a friend, and unfortunately, he had to see the friend laying there in somebody's arms, like shot. He had got shot in the head and a couple other places, and he was laying there, and he's telling this 911 operator that, "Hey, I don't think he's going to make it." And he still made it past a few days, and unfortunately, he passed away. And he even saw the message, and he was so ecstatic. He was like, "Oh my God." He's like, "I can't believe he did that." He had no idea the video was even coming. He had no idea I did it. And it was just, it costs nothing to be kind to somebody. And that's exactly what I tell people as I close the shows. It's just like, it costs nothing to be kind to somebody, because it really doesn't. One kind act you do could save somebody's life or even make their day, is what I say. Because think about it. A lot of times people think about suicide. They're like, "Well, I don't feel like I'm noticed, or I don't feel like people notice me, or I'm a burden," and things like this. And people don't notice me. I just float by like a ghost. But you just making that one positive comment to them could make their whole day there, or just, hey, just kill them with kindness, as they say.
Right.
That people just like, I've had people that didn't say a word to me or at work come in, like now they'll have a full conversation with me. And it's just because it's the constant thing of just, "Hey, how you doing?" and things like that, and it's just a feeling that you get from people too. And it's the genuality and things like that. And I have the uncanny ability though to connect with people on another level. And before I started this, it was a good friend of mine that he kept saying that. He said, "Pete, did anyone ever tell you that you can connect to people in a very strange way? It's just like, just make them feel real comfortable." And it's like, man, I'm just me. Let me honest, I'm just 100% me. I've gone through everything. I've done things. I'll admit to if I'm wrong. There's sometimes I won't admit I'm wrong, but it is what it is. I'm human at the end of the day. So
I have a hard time admitting I'm wrong too, but fortunately, I'm not wrong very often. So
is that what you try to tell yourself? That's okay.
Yeah.
He can't keep a straight face saying that. He's like,
I know.
Unfortunately, I'm not wrong all the time.
Unfortunately, I'm not wrong very often. So
Yeah.
I can't even get it out right. Yeah, I think that it's so, one of the things I love about what you're doing here is this kind of constant conversation and breaking it down in a different way, like just more of the casual conversation. I always tell people, one of the tricks I learned in early recovery that was important for me was to reach out to people who weren't in recovery.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we have like our close knit, like people who are helping us in whatever we're going through. And it can become really intense for a really long time, right? Like I'm only talking to people who are doing this hard work. And I was like, sometimes I just needed to call like somebody who is just living their normal life. And I just wanted to talk to them about what they were doing at work that day. Like I
Yeah.
needed to step out of this bubble and into a different one. And we do that on the lives too. Like you were just talking about, we were talking about that live that I was on earlier with you. Like we end up talking about snacks a lot and
Mm.
movies and TV shows, and people will come in and like, I thought this was a recovery group. And I'm like, no, it's just a like we're having a conversation about life, and part of that is recovery, and part of it is, hey, what show are you watching right now? And I think
Yeah.
it's like having that space instead of it being so intense all the time is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah, exactly. Because like sometimes you just want to take a break from everything. It's okay to be normal. And then, like I said, a lot of people are like, "Oh, he's the mental health guy." Okay, that's great. I'm the mental health guy, but I have other interests and things I like. It's just like some days it's just like I'm just basically in there talking about whatever, and it's just like Pete versus Anxiety is the brand, but I mean I'm just a person, like Pete has other interests other than that. But I'm like, I'll talk to you about every subject. Like somebody brings it up, I'll talk about it. Doesn't bother me, or I'm together with a bunch of people. We're just chatting about whatever at that time, and it's just random topics every day. So like when you hit that button, it's let's go. It's anything can happen, and you know that better than anybody that that's what happens, especially
Yeah.
here in this show. Like we anything can happen.
Yeah, you never know what's going to come up next. I mean, and people are, you can be having a whole conversation about chiclets and TikToks or TikToks, and then somebody says something about like something they're really struggling with their mental health or with their
And we switch
family,
instantly. You know what I'm
and you
saying? Yeah,
switch, right? You got to go. We're going right to that. And the great thing about I think so many of these spaces too. Like I'm really fortunate that I have a great group of people that are on the live every day. I have amazing moderators that help me, but they're so supportive. Like
yeah,
it's just this immediate rallying of not advice, and that's one of the things that I think is really like holding space for people. um our group is awesome about both on our online community as well as in the lives, is that it's about holding space for people and telling them that they're supported and not rushing to the fix it. And I think
yeah,
that that's something that's so helpful, because often people are like, oh, you're struggling, here's
right,
all the solutions. They're like,
yeah,
I've tried all this, now you're just frustrating me,
yeah.
right?
Because you're telling me things I already know, and it's
Yeah.
it's just yeah, I get that, and it makes sense. So in the sense that they know they're not alone is the other thing too. Like
Yeah.
it's a big key point is that people aren't alone. Like that's a great thing is that we all can come together and understand that we're all messed up,
Yeah.
and it's okay to be fucked up. Honestly, let's call it what it is. Okay, we're here on YouTube, we can say it. We're all fucked up at some point. I
Right.
mean, but it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. What
Right.
degree you're messed up is it's at your own. You do meet interesting people with different things, and it's like so many of these people don't have a safe place because if they say something, that someone's going to turn around and judge them instantly.
Mhm.
And that's the nice thing about this is that we can talk about anything. Like people message me all the time and say just want to talk to me. Like I've had people even tell me, "Hey, I'm thinking about taking my life," and 988 comes up is the first thing I'm saying. Listen, if you're really
Right.
that serious, 988 is what you need to call. These guys are trained professionals.
Yeah.
I'll listen to you if you want to talk to me, but I'm going to tell you if I'm concerned, I am either A, calling somebody to track down your location, or B, giving you the number to call somebody and say, hey, you need to call these people because they're better equipped to handle your situation versus me.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm always willing to listen though,
Oh,
and it's
100%.
just I've gotten some crazy messages over the past few months with this thing, and it started picking up momentum. And like I go in a lot of rooms and people are always talking about it. It's great because I don't even have to say anything. They're all talking about exactly what I'm doing. Oh, hey, have you followed Pete? Have you seen Pete's podcast? And it's like and you don't even have to be there long, just a few minutes in.
Yep.
And I'm trying to get to as many as I can. I appreciate all the invites, everybody. I really do, but you don't have to. I'll eventually get there. I promise. Like, damn, okay, 30 invites is enough for me. But, and it's nice, because it's like now ever so often, it's like, I go in some of these rooms and they're just shouting your name out, and it feels great because it's like people know who you are, and then they're doing all the talking for you, and it's like, okay, well, guess like I've got to go to the next room now. I don't got to really say much here.
It is great. I think it is so great to have that, like when people start to understand like what you're about and what you're
Yeah,
advocating for and what you're talking about, it's really awesome. I've experiencing the same thing. It's so it's amazing to see people say, "Oh yeah, I was watching you," or I passed your name on to somebody else, or
Yeah. Oh, I'm always passing people's names on
yeah.
everybody. Trust me.
And I'm
I
the
have
same
a
way. Like if I meet, we talk about, I have a friend who runs a family recovery program. Like mine is always for the person in addiction, everything that I do. But I have a friend that runs a family recovery program. And people are like, hey, how do I help my family member? Like, read this book, talk to this person. Like, that's like, I want to know as many people as I can.
exactly.
So that when somebody comes to me like, okay, I know who you should talk to, or I know how you can get started, or at least like listen to this podcast or read this book or whatever it is, so that this is a gateway for you to get started.
Yeah, and it's the nice thing about it is like I've got so many people I've met so far, and just different things and different podcast hosts and things that people do. And it's just like when I look back at just the first like half of this thing I've done already, if I already had a 2-time Amazon international bestseller on, and I talk to her on a regular basis, just like she's a normal person. You know, Lucy Lenore, she's 635,000 downloads and talks to me like a normal person.
Yeah.
I talk to all these people. I talked to a girl, in fact, she has she's in the top 10% of Spotify podcasts from last year alone. And she started hers in May. So I'm like, you know, I've got all these different people I network with and, you know, different people I run into. And I'm always taking little tidbits of things. Like if I think you can help somebody, I'm like, hey, reach out to my buddy Austin, or hey, reach out to this person, or hey, you know what would be a great place for you to go and share your story? This is the place to go. And I'm always asking people like, hey, how do I get people in touch with you and things like that? So, which leads me to my next question. How do people find you besides if they're not on TikTok? I know you're on Instagram because we follow each other there.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. All my usernames are the same. So I'm on all the platforms like so many of us are now. I'm on 3 primarily: TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Austin J. Karrrr, and it's Karr. I'm on all those platforms, and I post mostly daily. I don't talk a lot about my personal experience, but I talk a lot about how people are recovering, what we're learning about the science of addiction, the treatment of addiction, and how we can all improve our happiness over time. So yeah. All the platforms, Austin J. Karrrr.
Definitely. So, all right, guys, we're gonna wrap up this episode of Pizza vs. Anxiety. Austin, thank you so much for coming, man. Like, you're more than welcome to come back again. We can do this again anytime you want. You just let me know. I got a Patreon schedule wide open for you, buddy. You can come back and we can talk about whatever you want.
I'd love that.
We'll have an intervention about your football team. But anyways,
I'll wear a Broncos shirt next time.
He's like, I'm gonna wear it like this. Like, here, look at it. It's right in front of your face.
Or a jersey next time. That's what I'm doing.
Right. All right, guys. Well, you know where to find me. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety on Instagram, pretty much like Visa, everywhere you want me to be, guys. I'm everywhere and anywhere you can be. I'm also on TikTok at PeteVsAnxiety.ig6 or whatever it is I have at the end of it now. And all the other great things. Anyways, guys, but I got to wrap up this episode. I have to be back in a couple hours for Live's Lost at 6 o'clock in case y'all want to be here. Austin, once again, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, you're more than welcome to come back anytime you like. You know, we can discuss your problems with your football teams and everything like that.
I appreciate it.
And it's like I like to say, guys, it's cost nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do can save somebody's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety signing off saying, hey, don't ask how you're doing, but ask how your mental health is today.